Okay, we're going to get started now. So this is Google Sheets Advanced, and we're going to be talking today about some more things you can do with Google Sheets. Just a little housekeeping thing before we start. I'm going to keep you muted during most of the class. I will pause periodically and ask if there are any questions. If there are, you will see on your screen there's a little button that says raise your hand. At that point, you can raise your hand and I will unmute you and you can ask whatever your question is. So let's just go and get started. I'm going to get my screen share up here and we'll be on our way. Okay, so here we are in the sheet we're going to be using for this class. So this is what we're going to be working with here as we are working with test scores again. This time though, we have a lot more students. I'm going to go down, I think we got about 45 of them, 44. And we got a lot more tests to deal with here. So what we're going to be starting with here is we're going to be working with doing a little formatting to first. So we're going to start here with our top row where we have the labels that tell us what data is underneath that. And we want this row to be really clear so we can see what we're looking at here. So we're going to do a combination of shading and font changes to that to make it really stand out. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the cells I want to include. Up here, I'm going to go here for the paint bucket. And let's just stick a blue fill in there, like that one. I'm also going to change the font color to white so it stands out a little bit more. So here we have the text color option, and I'm just going to pick a white from there. I'm going to make it bold. And lastly, I'm going to make it a lot bigger. So I'm going to put that up to 14 point. And there we go. Now, this unfortunately has had the effect that our columns are now too narrow and it's too crowded in. So we're going to have to do something about that. So we're going to use AutoFit to make sure that these columns fit. Now, what AutoFit does is it automatically adjusts the width of the column to whatever the largest entry in the column is. So there's a quick way to do that, which is you just double click on the line between the two columns and that'll do the AutoFit. But we want to do a whole bunch of columns at once, so we don't want to have to select each one individually to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all the columns. And then you're going to have to right click on that. And then underneath here, you'll find the option to resize your columns. And you have here the option to fit to data. And I'm just going to say OK. And that's going to do the auto fit for all those columns. And I wanted to point that out because that is one of those things that Sheets does differently than Excel. In Excel, you can find the resize column data under one of the menus. You really can't do that in Sheets. You have to right click to get to that option. Okay, so now this is all set here. Now, as you're scrolling through a sheet like this, that's very long, or for that matter, very wide, it's easy to lose track of what you're looking for. Like say you want to find out what someone did on test 11 and they're way down here. It's hard to tell which column you need to look in to find test 11. So what would be nice is being able to keep this row of labels up at the top, regardless of where we go in the sheet. And you can do that through something called freezing panes. Now, to freeze the panes, you click typically in a cell underneath where you want to freeze. You then go to the View tab, and then you have here your freeze options. And here you have a couple options of things you can freeze. So you can freeze one row, two rows, or if you wanted to have, like, say, several rows, you could start at whatever you're out. So say if I was down here in row 15, and I went to that option, I can go up to the current row with 15. But we just want to freeze the one row, so that's what I'm going to do here. So View, Freeze, one row. And if you go now, if I scroll down and I want to see how Zaid here did on test 11, it's easy to see. Okay. So another thing I want to mention about freezing panes, and we'll see this as we go through this class a little bit more. This is another one of those places where I want to point out there's a difference between Sheets and Excel, because in Excel, when you freeze panes, it's almost strictly a visual thing. It has no real effect on the sheet. Whereas when you're working in sheets, it actually does do some things, and it can make certain things like sorting a little bit easier if you use the freeze panes option. Okay. So now we have our sheet set. We've done the formatting. We got it looking okay. Now we want to start doing the math. So what we want to do is we want to calculate the average test score for all these tests. We have 15 different tests here. And we're going to just do this the easy way. We're just going to type equals average. And you notice here it's really getting, Sheets is figuring out exactly what you want to do very quickly here. It's giving a suggestion here. So it'd be C2 through Q2. So I'm just going to click on that. So our formula here is average parentheses, and then the range that we're going to average, which is C2 through Q2. Let's hit the enter key. And not only did it do that and suggest our formula, it's suggesting an autofill. So instead of having to do a second step, all we have to do is check that box, and it fills out all the rest of our formulas. Okay, so any questions on that? Okay, good. So now we have all these cells here. And again, we're dealing with grades. We don't really need all these decimal places. So we're just going to select this. And then I'm going to go here to decrease the amount of decimal places. So it started by pulling out the maximum. Then I'm just going to tap until I decrease it so that there are no decimal places left. And it also does all the rounding for that. Okay. So now we have our grades are averaged, we have our first row set. Now we want to sort our students so their names are in alphabetical order. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to start here, and we're going to go to the, data, and we're going to go here, and we're just going to say here, sort sheet by column A to Z. And it did that. And notice it did not include it did not put last name DAC down in the L's. And that is because we froze that pane. So it won't pull it down into the sort. So all we had to do was click on sort. If you didn't have that pane frozen, you would have to select the cells you want before you do the sort. Okay. Okay. So we've been working in one sheet here, but you can have multiple sheets in any one spreadsheet. This is why in Excel they call it a workbook, can have multiple sheets in it. So we have here a second sheet. Notice down here the tab's sheet 2. And this has other grades for our students. Now notice here they are not in alphabetical order. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to sort them. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the freezing panes just before we do that. So view to freeze, do the one row. And I'm going to do the sort so they're in the proper order. So they match up sheet 1 and sheet 2. We have our students in the same order. Okay. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to get the information that the average we calculated here over into here. And there's a couple different ways you could do this. We're going to be using a sheet reference for that. Oh, this caused a slight problem here. I'll fix that a little bit later. With the sort caused a slight problem with something a little off to the side, but we'll fix that a little bit later. So right now we have nothing here. So we want to put in a reference so that we can get the information from sheet 1 over here to sheet 2. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rename sheet 1. So if I right click on the tab, I have here the rename option. So I'm just going to call this one tests. You can also change the color of the tab. So if you want to, you can change that tab to, let's do matching blue. So you see here now you have a little blue line down here. And you can see if you had a lot of different sheets in a workbook, having multiple colors could help you tell which one is which. It's just another little visual thing that can clue you into what sheet you're looking at. Okay. So now we're going to go into sheet 2. what we want to do now is write what is essentially a formula that's going to tell sheets to take whatever's in this cell on this sheet and put it here in on this sheet. So we're going to type equals, then the sheet name, which is tests, exclamation point, and then the cell, which is R2, that we want the information to come from. Okay, so we have that there. It's suggesting an autofill, so we're going to use that as well. Fill in for the rest of our students. If we go here, we'll see here the first few numbers, 75, 88, 84. Over here, same thing, 75, 88, 84. So this is pulling that information from this sheet over here to the second sheet. Now, the reason you do something like this, and you have this set up as a link, as a sheet reference, instead of like, say, copy and pasting the numbers, is that it means you can make changes to the data on this sheet and it'll be reflected in an earlier sheet. So let's say we figured out there was a big grading error on test 7 for Caden here. And it turned out instead of getting a 51, he got a 91. So we're going to change that number to 91. And when we do that, this calculates his average up to 77. And that goes here to 77 and would affect also any other formulas that are used throughout the rest of the sheet. Okay, so do you see how that works with the linking of the two sheets? Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay. All right. So we're now going to calculate a final grade for these students. And instead of using a straight average, we're going to be doing a weighted average for these students. And what this weighted average is going to be is that the tests from the test average is going to be half their average, and the other two, the midterm and the final, are going to be a quarter. And over here, I've set up the grade weighting. And unfortunately, that was disrupted a bit when I did these sorts. So I'm just going to fix that. So that's in the proper place. So tests, final, and midterm. You could, if you wanted to, actually do this on a second sheet, and that actually might be a better approach than what I'm doing here. But visually, when I'm doing the formula, it would be helpful for you to be able to see this as well. Okay. So we have this all set here. These are the weights we're going to give to each part of the average. So tests are half, so 0.5, midterms a quarter, 0.25, and the final is a quarter, 0.25, and this would add up to 100% to calculate the grade. So let's start with Caden over here. So equals average, but we're going to use this one here where it says weighted. And there it opens up the parenthesis. Now, what you do here to do the weighted average formula is you pick the number you want, then you put a comma in, and then you put whatever the weight is going to be. So for our first one, so we want tests, so this would be cell C2, comma, and the weighting for that is the tests over here, which is cell M2. And we're going to hit a comma here. Same thing here, midterm. That's D2, comma, midterm weighting here, M3, comma, and finally, the final grade, which is cell E2, comma, and then the final here, which is M4. Close the parenthesis, hit enter, and then you have the calculated grade here. Now, notice Sheets did not suggest doing an autofill here. And I'm just going to demonstrate why. It's because in this particular circumstance, the way this formula is constructed, autofill is not going to work correctly. So I'm going to just pull it down for a few. And you notice here we're getting this error value. And it's what, if you look here at the error message that is popping up, it says it expects number values, but one of the cells that it's looking at is empty and then cannot be a number. So it can't do the calculation. So if you look here at the formula here for the next cell down. So you have C3, which is right here, which is correct. And then M3, which is the midterm weighting value. And this goes on and on till the last cell that they're trying to include, which would be M5, which is here, which is empty. And this is because of how autofill works. So autofill looks at the formula, looks where it's positioned on the sheet, and then when you copy it, it looks at its new position on the sheet and makes adjustments based on that. Unfortunately, in this particular formula's case, that's not going to work because it can't move. It's moving the average grade weighting values as well as these values, and it's just not going to work as a formula. Fortunately, this is actually something that's fairly easy to fix. Let's go back to our original cell. And what we need to do here is make it so that Sheets always looks at cells M2, M3, M4 for that weighting. So regardless of where we copy this formula, it's always going to look to those 3 cells for the weighting. So that's going to mean we're going to be changing the cell references in the formula to absolute cell references. Very simply, we're going to be typing some dollar signs. So for M2, we're going to change it to $M, $2. Let's say the same thing for M3 and M4. And now here, notice it's suggesting the autofill because now it's making more sense to Sheets that this is something that can be autofilled. So we'll do that there. And if we look down here at one of these formulas, you'll notice we have the C8, D8, and E8, but those M2, M3, and M4 have stayed the same. Okay, so are there any questions on doing an average like this or doing an absolute cell reference? Okay, so, all right, so we're going to do a little bit more formatting work here. First off, get rid of those decimal places. And we'll do a little formatting up here. Fill, change the text color, bold, and let's make it a little bit bigger too. Okay, let's see, can I do the resize column? No, not for this. Okay, so then we're going to do a column resize again. This time, I'm not going to do an auto fit. I'm going to do an absolute. So let's see. Let's try this 100, see how that looks. Ooh, pretty good. You got a bit of a problem here. Let's make it a little bit bigger. 120. One more. Okay, so this is getting a little too big. I am going to instead change this label so it just says tests. And there really weren't any quizzes anyway, so we'll go with just tests. Okay. Oh, one more thing. This is I am going to center align those headers. Okay. Okay, so now that that's all done, we're now going to add a few borders to this. I'm going to start by putting a thick border around the outside of all our cells, and that's going to be, oops, that. The border option is this box here, and you set your width, oops, get that back. Set your border style or the width here, so I'm going to start with that thick one. And just put that around the outside. I am then going to, oops, I'm going to select a different set. So I'm going to select now everything except for that first row. I'm going to go in the borders option again here, set it back to something thin, and then just do the inside borders here. So now we have that. Okay, yeah, that looks pretty good. Not going to be doing a lot of fancy stuff with this. So now that we have this all done, we're now going to look at some filtering options. Okay, so this is the filter here. So we're just going to click, oops, first we need to be in somewhere in the data for this to work. Then we need to create a filter. And once this is done here, you'll see there's now these little drop downs next to every student in the class. And you can use these to sort this data in a couple different ways. So let's say we want to know what student got the highest grade. So we just click here and we say here, sort A to Z, which is essentially what it will work with. And now, oh, that's lowest. We want to go Z to A. It's a little confusing to get to highest. But here we have now, so we have Nasana, Kia, Alistair, they're all up there at the top. Let's say we wanted to know who had the lowest test option. So we can go here. And there's Kelly and Emily up there. So they had the lowest grades for the tests. Let's say we just wanted to know who got between two values on the final. So we can clear here. Oops. And then let's say we want, let's say between 80 and 85. Sorry, Zoom bar's in the way. Okay. And now we should just see, oh, that didn't work. Let's try this again. Not sure why this isn't working. Let me try this again. Let's try tests. Okay, so that worked. So why wasn't it working on the final? So let's just do this one by the. Oh, maybe I had to clear it first. Okay. So now we're just seeing a small subset of the students here. Notice here the row numbers are different. So it's just picking up all the cells that match the criteria in the filter. There are lots of different ways you can filter data. This can be a very powerful tool depending on how complicated you have. Just gonna clear that out. Oh, I need to do select all. Okay, so that should bring everyone back. Yes, they're all back now. And let's just put these guys back into alphabetical order. So you can use filtering to do alphabetical sorts as well, if you want to. So any questions on the filtering option? Okay, so we only have one thing left, which is printing. Okay, so let's take a look at what we get when we first go to print this. All right, so we got 2 pages there, looks good, and we got this grade weighting off on the last page here. So let's say we don't want that grade rating there. We're going to cancel this, and we're going to instead select the cells we want to print. And then we're going to go to print again. And this time, all right, I'm missing something here. Oh, I know what I'm missing. Okay, let's try that again. So go to print here, and here see it says it's printing current sheet. We can change that. So that's just going to print the selected cells. So now it's just printing the cells that we selected. Okay. So this is actually fitting pretty nicely on the page. It's not like we're going to have to do any scaling, which is good. Notice here, our top row is repeating on both pages. And that's because we froze that first row. It's showing up on repeating on the pages. So it's not really a problem with this particular sheet having it go onto more than one page because that first row is there, so you're always going to know what you're looking at. Okay, so I'm going to go into formatting here. And I am going to change the alignment. So right now it's aligned on the left-hand margin, And this is the alignment of the entire sheet I'm changing here. I'm going to change that over to center. So now that sheet is centered, that looks a little bit nicer that way. I'm also going to add in some headers and footers to this. And I'm going to here, and here's to notice here, if I didn't want that row to be repeated, I could uncheck that box. Matter of fact, I'll do that so you can see. Get rid of it? Probably not. I might have to reload. Okay, maybe I'm not. It won't let me change it. That's not letting me change it. I'm just going to leave it then. So let's go here to the edit custom fields. So I can do some headers and footers on my sheet. So here, I want I'm adding a title, I'm adding some more information. Here I am going to put summer 2021. So that's all text I typed in. Now down at the bottom, I'm going to add some auto fields. So we're going to add here the date. And you have here, you have a whole bunch of different formats you can pick from. I'm going to use this one. This will be showing the date that this document was printed out. So this date will automatically update for every day it comes in. We can also add in, say, the workbook title or the sheet name. I'm just going to leave it neither one of those because it's not going to really, well, it's, yeah, we're going to not leave those there. And here we can do the page number. And you have three options here. And I'm just going to pick this one where it says page 1. And then I'm going to click on confirm. So now we have this header and footer information, which is telling us some more information about our sheet. Okay. Okay, so the next step would just be to print it. And that's it. So do you have any questions on this? Okay, well, today went to be a pretty short class. So we got through the material really quickly. Next week, we're going to be looking at Google Forms. And the week after that, well, we're going to be doing 2 weeks on Google Forms. In the first week, we're going to be looking at how to make a form. And the second week, we're going to be doing how to work with the data your form collects. And that's almost going to be a bit of a Google Sheets 3 because the place that Google Forms puts its data is in Google Sheets. So if you want to learn a little bit more about Google Sheets, the Google Forms 2 class is going to go into that with some detail. Okay, so if that's it, thank you for coming, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Bye.